Back with you tonight, John in Focus. A faction of the AmaZulu Royal family has expressed unhappiness with a ceremony planned for this weekend to pledge loyalty to King Newzroom Afrika. Representing the faction, Prince Mbonisi KaBhekuzulu says that the entering of the royal kraal ritual would only add confusion on who's the rightful king. This follows a similar ritual by Prince KaBhekuzulu, who has proclaimed himself the rightful heir to the throne. Joining us now to explain the extent of the confusion is Professor Sihawukele Ngubane, Head of African Languages at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Prof, good evening and thank you very much for your time and for joining us today here on In Focus. Who are these candidates that are claiming the Zulu kingship, and what's the argument for each one of them, and are these legitimate arguments, and does it bring confusion to this particular matter?
Good evening, Thabo, and your viewers at home. I think what we see now is an interesting development, because all the eyes and the excitement are directed to the event that is taking place on Saturday, when King Newzroom KaBhekuzulu will be performing the traditional coronation ritual of the kraal entering Mbonisi. So what is happening now is trying to distract what is expected to happen. But in terms of the third candidate, the Prince Buzabazi, comes from the second queen of the late King Zwelithini. And customarily, because I think the traditional leadership is governed by legislation. Here in KwaZulu-Natal, we have a Traditional Leadership Act of 2005, which speaks to how a king is identified by the family, and the family is divided at this point in time. That's why we see the tension mounting amongst the people who are supposed to be restoring culture in KwaZulu. So it's quite a disturbing event that has taken place this afternoon.
So those who are arguing for this particular candidate, they're saying that the custom dictates that since the first queen's only son, Prince Letuktula Zwelithini, died, the heir should be the son of his second wife, and so Prince Buzabazi's name then comes forward. In terms of your understanding of customs, how true or how close to truth is that, and what would be the argument against that?
Yes, I think that's an interesting argument, because if you look at the third candidate that has been identified, he's not the eldest son of the second queen. He's younger than, there is another prince that is the firstborn within the family of the second queen, Ugamate. So the choice is against the custom. And also the second wife is not entitled to produce an heir. And we have been saying that the culture or the tradition dictates who should be the king, because of the position of his mother to be an heir. So in the case of Prince Buzabazi, he's from the second house. The second house is responsible to oversee Ubkosi. And if there's something that is not right in terms of governance of the monarch, then this house is there to correct the wrongs. So they can't produce an heir. That's the custom. But unless the custom is changing. I think we are writing a new culture. We know that culture evolves, and maybe it's the time that the culture is being changed or the tradition is being reviewed and applied in a different way. But what we know, the first wife, you mentioned the late Prince Lethuthula. He came from the first wife, uNdlunkulu uMadlamini. And according to the custom, the senior wife is the third wife in the case of the late King Ngubane. So the third wife was the wife that a lobola was paid by the nation. Once the king identifies a queen, like Umntanenkosi, it was a statement that is where the heir will come from.
Yeah.
And the other thing that adds to that argument is that King Misuzulu has blood from the maternal and paternal side. So it is a customary that a king will take from another kingship so that they strengthen relations between the two nations. So this is why Mntanenkosi came from Eswazini, which was part of the custom. So in terms of the custom, it is correct to say that King Misuzulu is the rightful heir to the throne of the Zulu nation.
Yeah.
So what is happening is distracting what is expected to happen on Saturday, because already preparations are underway. From Monday, we have seen Amabuto coming to Kwakhangela Mankengane. Tuesday, up to now, they are coming through. They are coming through to Kwakhangela Mankengane, and some of the rituals have already commenced as we speak today. So, yeah. I think what is happening is normal. Is normal. If you
I wanted to ask that, Prof. In Zulu, I don't know how to directly translate that in English, but ascendancy to the throne
is
contested.
A succession dispute among heirs.
Yeah. So is this a norm? Is this part of what needs to happen? And so it does not necessarily raise much of a concern?
Yes. Indeed, definitely, it doesn't raise much of a concern, because even when you go back in the 19th century, King Shaka fought for his position, and also King Cetshwayo, if you go through his clan praises, you see a list of names of his brothers that were against him to become a king, and there was a fight, a battle of Ndondabusuga, where his brother Mbuyazwe was killed in the fight. So there's a list of people who are against Cetshwayo to be identified as the king after King Bande, and it happened. It's always happening. So we thank God for now that there is still calmness amongst the Zulu people, because some of the people here are angry about what is happening. But we hope that the situation is going to be calm.
What has particularly surprised me, Prof, is this idea that anyone can just nominate. I mean, is Prince Mbonisi empowered to nominate? He seems to think he can come and say, no, this is the one that I nominate, or this is the one that I nominate. What is the process of nomination, or is there a process of nomination, or is the heir an obvious choice and there is no need for a nomination?
Yeah, we always say that a king is born, and it depends on the mother, like I've explained earlier. So what happens? The family takes the lead in identifying and recognizing the rightful heir, which did happen. But in this instance, the family was divided. So it was a faction of the family who identified King Misuzulu to be the next on the throne, whilst the other faction of the royal family was against the identification of Mrs. So that's where the problem is, and that's where the tension is, because up to today, the other faction is against Mrs. Zulu becoming the new king, although he's already a king because he has been recognized. And then the family will sit down and identify the name of the successor. Once the meeting has taken place, they take the name to the provincial government. In this case, the premier of the province will take the minutes and endorse the name that has been raised. And then from there, the name is forwarded to the national government, COGTA, and then COGTA will make a recommendation to the president. Right. And that has taken place. And the president has endorsed the name of King Misuzulu as the next king of the Zulus. And then that endorsement was gazetted in the government gazette. So the process is towards the final stage. What is happening on Saturday is the traditional leg of the coronation, and the next, the final leg will be announced shortly. But when the traditional part is accomplished, then the second part will be the handing over of the certificate by the state president to endorse King Misuzulu. So this is part of the coronation ritual that is taking place, because coronation is a rite of passage from being a prince to becoming a king. So the process that takes place on Saturday is to confirm that he is the king, and then a prayer from the royal ancestors to say, here is the king, and get the blessings from the ancestors.
Professor Ngubane, appreciate your time. Let's leave it there for tonight, and thank you very much for that clarity that you have brought there for us. Professor Sihawukele Ngubane from the University of KwaZulu-Natal.